Welcome to the Funded Now What podcast with your host, Andrew Lee Miller, brought to you by GrowthExpertz. You are in store for a chat about funding, marketing, startups, and all things growth.
Everybody, thank you so much for tuning in again to the Funded Now What podcast. I'm super excited to have my next guest here. Sam Obletz is the founder and CEO of Claim. Claim is something that everyone is going to be interested in because it's B2B and B2C. And on the B2C side, which is most interesting, I think, to the majority of people, it is a tool for discovering brands that you want to deal with, getting perks and loyalty things from them, and also being rewarded for consistently supporting the same brands that you love. And on the B2B side, Claim helps companies increase loyalty, generate more revenue, increase lifetime value. Am I doing a good job selling it for you, Sam, so far?
Yeah.
Thanks for being here, man.
You can take my job. Thanks for having me, Andrew.
I know how difficult it is to be a founder, but congratulations on closing $4 million, I think led by Sequoia, right?
Yeah, exactly.
That's
we closed,
awesome.
Thank you. We closed our round with them, had some other fantastic folks in the round as well who we can obviously chat through, and then did a pre-seed back in 2022. And we've been scaling ever since.
Awesome. What led you to want to build something like this? First of all?
Yeah. So I think the insights for Claim kind of came concurrently to both myself and my co-founder Tap. So insight number one for us was that incumbent social media is flailing for consumer attention. To break that down, when you're on Instagram or Facebook or any other platform, brands are trying to reach you via sponsored posts, hiring influencers, and my attention as a consumer, candidly, is at an all-time low. And so that was kind of the mismatch that we identified first. The second part was that our digital interactions between our friends and our acquaintances, we think are becoming more and more diluted. It's me liking a post or me sending a Venmo, and we've kind of lost the deep human connection there. And then lastly, moving to the marketer's side and kind of speaking to point number one about advertising being broken, it's harder than ever right now to find a new customer, engage that customer, drive LTV, drive brand love. And there are a lot of secular reasons and kind of themes involved. But myself and my co-founder looked at this kind of problem space and said, wow, we can disrupt a multi-decabillion dollar industry, $100 billion, trillion dollar industry with advertising. Let's go after it. And so we ended up starting when we were both in grad school together, leveraging the faculty in grad school who had kind of the marketing expertise and building on our own various backgrounds to build Claim from there.
Wow. Okay, so it's an advertising tool, but I also read online it's just like a social network as well, a little bit for the end user. Can you explain how that works?
Yeah, so our mission with Claim is to create easy and affordable memories. And that mission is to serve consumers, and in particular, Gen Z. So the value prop, to your point, is you get rewarded when you discover new brands with friends. That is our value to our consumers. On the marketer side, or the brand side of the marketplace, the value that we're delivering is that we're helping you acquire and engage the next generation of shoppers, i.e. Gen Z. And it's that two-sided kind of market, which obviously has all the expected network effects that we're really building towards with Claim.
Got it. So with any two-sided marketplace, you usually want to pick a few geo-specific locations to really hone in on the marketing. Where is Claim live and thriving right now?
Yeah, you're spot on. So we started in Boston and particularly on Harvard's campus. Within the first month, we were able to growth hack our way to about half of campus being on Claim with no actual marketing spend. We now are at something like 70 to 80% of Harvard's campus about a year to a year and a half later. But we've taken some of the learnings of that, to your point, local kind of geo launch and applied that to different geos across the country. Things that end up being a lot bigger, like UT Austin, where Claim is massive, or University of Michigan, or in Los Angeles, USC, UCLA. We've been able to show that this kind of playbook can translate to different types of geographies, but we still are fixed by geography, and you still need a school email at one of the Claim schools to join, because part of our journey as founders is making sure that we're not growing beyond our kind of skis or our understanding of the engine.
Absolutely. Awesome. That's really like, 20 years after Facebook did it, doing like similar thing from, you used to have a Harvard email, then it was a few other colleges, soon high schoolers, and from there. That's really awesome. Let's talk more about this fundraising. While you're in grad school, you got access to all the faculty and they're helping with marketing, but raising money while in school is something I haven't ever talked about on this podcast. Was this your first time raising funding then for a startup?
Yeah, first time raising institutional capital, VC.
Yeah. So you don't look like you lost your hair from stress, but let me ask the first question I always ask people: how many calls do you think it took to get your first check?
Probably about a dozen or so. But I
Oh,
would
that's
say
not
that
bad at all.
this was for our pre-seed round, and we frankly got really lucky with being introduced, and this is crucial for fundraising tactics, but
Yeah.
finding a warm introduction to the right investors is so crucial for the
Yeah.
conversation to be taken more seriously. And so we were fortunate that via a friend who was interning at a fund, we were introduced to, the right
Nice.
partners at the right fund. But what was more
Absolutely.
fortunate than anything was, to us, it's very clear early on if the tenor of a conversation is going to be dreaming together or nitpicking. And and by that I mean dreaming together is like, where can this go? Have you thought about this? Like, this is so cool, versus a conversation starting with, what's your DAO MAU? What's your churn? What's your
It's
revenue?
very
Um,
rational. Yeah.
exactly. And both have a place during a diligence process, and both should
Right.
be, in my opinion, emphasized at different times of a company's life cycle and funding stage.
Mhm.
But for us, we were able to find really kind of aligned, excited, prepared minds in our early investors, which probably shortened the number of calls that we had to make.
That's not lucky. That's actually really important. A lot of people on this podcast tell me and listeners, you're looking for more than just money. Anybody can go out and just find money, even right now. I mean, there's more than you think out there, but you want to find investors that are going to dream with you, like you said, and not just be like, okay, this might make us a return. And it's not necessarily smart money versus dumb money. It's like the dream is what you want. Then you get more referrals and intros in there. They care about you. They're up at night thinking about your company, and that's going to create a ton more value. But you're also going to have the space to dream and the space to take some risks and experiment with that money and not feel like, they're weighing you down and slowing you down. So I think that's a
I
really
think that's
smart
exactly
decision.
right. And if you're taking venture funding, I think you have to be prepared for a decade plus of company
Yeah, it's a
building,
long-term
just based on
relationship. Yeah.
timeline to exit. And if that's the case, then you do want to find those people at the outset who you do want to ride or die with for the next 10
Right.
years. And so there's
Yeah.
all sorts of pressure. I think in our society, we celebrate the amount of funding that a founder can raise, or the valuation and how much dilution was minimized or whatever. But
Mhm.
we solved far more for thesis alignment, person to person alignment, and the ability to dream together.
That's really, really awesome feedback and tips in the beginning. How much do you feel like that early traction at Harvard made it easy for you to raise money? Like, were there, was that a big factor, or, would you still have to prove the concept, or people were like, yes, this is going to work everywhere?
Yeah, it probably varies on stage, right? So pre-seed for us, the way that we approached it was, can we build a consumer experience that people love? And we proved that by showing, high penetration in our early markets, also retaining users at a pretty insanely high rate. But there's kind of two ways that we found you can raise. You can either raise on, an incredible story and narrative, or you can raise on unit economics and very key metrics. And again, both of those things can be emphasized at different points in the company's fundraising story. But for us, we had kind of clear early signal that people loved the consumer side. And so that to us at the pre-seed was, team plus story plus early indication of consumer product market fit. Seed kind of changes in terms of what we as a company are solving for, what investors we're solving for. And then obviously Series A, you start to want to balance all of those things with clearer metrics.
Right. No, that makes sense. I mean, you're very clued in, and I think that also gives investors, and when you have that long-term vision and that the different goals at different stages, it makes investors less worried. A lot of people are just like, I need this money to finish building this thing, or I need this money to launch in this new market, which I don't know if this really takes a ton of money to grow, because it's about with friends. When I see with friends in the tagline of a product, I'm like, oh, there's so much K factor and growth hacking opportunities there.
Yeah.
And K factor, for those listening that don't know, means like the viral coefficient of a product. I mean, the dream of a marketer is a naturally viral product. That's a marketing foundation that I can pour gasoline on and will continue to burn, because it's incentivizing virality, or it's baked in. Before we get to this fun marketing stuff, though, because again, I'm so excited to talk as there's both sides of the market there, B2B and B2C. What is the one thing that surprised you most about raising money for this company? I mean, you seem like you had an easier time than a lot of people I've had on the show, but was there one thing that really did stress you out?
It's a really good question. I think in retrospect, I was surprised, but maybe not so surprised about how building relationships before fundraising is important. There was probably a point in time in 2021 with kind of the frothiness in venture where you can raise on a dime and construct a hot round just through FOMO and the like.
Yeah.
And we're back there for AI companies. Claim is not an AI company. We're not putting AI in the name, but
Good.
certainly a lot of companies are building incredible things in the space and are going to have an easy time fundraising if AI is core to their value. For us, it's not. And so it's no longer as easy to snap your fingers and construct an incredible fundraising round, again, with the right mission aligned, incredible investors.
Right.
And so for me, and the reason I'll be down in SF, hopefully we can meet up if you're around,
Absolutely. I'll be
is
there.
is to continue to build those relationships, give kind of data points that the investors that we're excited to deepen our relationships with or build relationships with can look at and construct the slope between those data points. And so when we're ready to raise, they're already kind of brought along with us. They already understand what we're doing. They've extrapolated from the slope that we've tried to provide them towards where Claim is going from a momentum standpoint. And so it's kind of counterintuitive. As a founder, fundraising can be a major source of stress. It can be
Yeah,
a distraction,
for
but if
sure.
you can devote the time very tactically to finding the right investors that you want to cultivate a relationship with, it can pay dividends to make the fundraise more powerful, easier, at better terms in the future.
So even starting like early to build those relationships, we're building this. I'm not ready to show it to you yet, but when it comes time, I would love to, show you what we're working on, like building those relationships early. I love that. I also love what you said about, not just adding in buzzwords and keywords. I mean, I get hit up by or see companies out there that have thrown AI, and it's like a tiny piece of what their company is. It's nothing more than really a feature, and it's just, an API call from
Yeah.
OpenAI, but they're an AI company to try and, jump on the bandwagon of those buzzwords. And I love that Sam said, don't do that. True to your guns. And if you're not creating enough value from your main purpose, then you're not working on the right thing, and you just have to go back to searching for that PMF. So that's awesome. You're the first non-AI company I think I've seen that's crushing it. But there's definitely
Well, happy to be
opportunity.
here.
What if I'm a consumer that doesn't know what kind of brands I want, and then you do AI matching? No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
Hey,
But
we've done some experimentation, I'll say that, but we're
there
not going
there
to start.
is AI in the name, so you could just capitalize it, and then no, I'm just kidding. But no, that's awesome. So that's really great feedback. Let's jump into the marketing stuff. So, you mentioned before the call that you've already developed a playbook ready to launch in new markets, and you're ready to do that. Can you walk through some of like the marketing channels that are being most beneficial for you? Pick either side that you want, whatever you're comfortable to share.
Yeah, of course. So let's start consumer side. As I mentioned, Claim starts at college campuses. And during the summer, I think there's a reasonable question too of what happens when all the students go home or they're going to, major metropolitan areas. And so we allow them to essentially take Claim with them by launching and supporting certain geographies like New York, like SF, like LA. And so that's kind of point one. It's important to note also our consumer loop, I think, too, Andrew, before we talk kind of marketing and how to reach students.
Okay.
If you're familiar with HQ Trivia or Be Real or T-Mobile Tuesdays, all of these examples create macro moments where they're bringing everyone together for kind of a communal experience,
Big time, yeah.
or a Nike sneaker drop, if you will. And we do the same thing where we have the drop, and the drop happens every Thursday at the same time. We text all of our users, everyone comes to claim, and you have this kind of experience where you're unwrapping your brand for the week. Crucially, one brand, not a bunch of ads that you're seeing. And all your friends are seeing what you're unwrapping, where you've been, and you're making plans to go together to try these new places. And so that's the social experience that we're creating. And the reason that I wanted to share that context is because we're now allowing you to take drops to these different cities. And that means that we need to have merchants or the brands on our platform in these different cities to support the drop experience. And if you're not in one of our drop cities, you can set yourself to other or traveling, and you'll get a bunch of e-commerce and kind of retail and direct to consumer brands too, which you can try anywhere in the world. So
very cool. That's really neat. Go ahead.
Oh no, so from a marketing perspective for consumers, it's really like hand-to-hand combat, frankly.
Yeah.
It's launching on college campuses, it's finding student groups, it's finding Greek organizations, it's finding ambassadors, student interns, creating the right mechanisms and kind of framework for them to organically grow on a campus. One thing we realized in the last few months is that Instagram and TikTok are part of the core consumer journey for discovering what claim is and validating what claim is in a way that I think I underappreciated. I thought, being somewhat older than a college student, go to the website, maybe go to the LinkedIn, like, okay, this thing's legit. No, absolutely not.
Come on, Gramps.
How many followers do you have? Is your content cool? And so we have doubled down on our social channels because they are the primary means of a student finding and actually seeing, is claim worth my time? Is claim trustworthy?
Yep. Awesome. So I want to talk a little bit about this. I don't know if you know this, but I'm ex-Tinder, and
Nice.
I when at Tinder launched some side projects for them where I was given a budget to go do crazy things at college campuses as an old post-college aged person in LA and at USC and different campuses around there. And so I got a real firsthand hand-to-hand combat experience. But going way back, even before that, my very first role ever in marketing was a campus ambassadorship for a small startup that ended up getting bought by Amazon called Ep8 2000, and I'm not going to say it, but but at least it wasn't in the 90s. No, it was 2006, I think. It's 2007 maybe. But so but we noticed absolutely what you're saying. Like college ambassadors are great. Your Greek organizations are still the tastemakers for sure. But we also noticed a lot of offline stuff working really well. Like, so working with those ambassadors to do offline things and, maybe I shouldn't say this in recordings. Yes, okay. Sponsoring parties, making sure everyone's 21 at the party and things like that. That shit really works really, really well. And it's okay at an early stage to do things that don't scale. But another thing I think that wasn't around when I was focusing on this target demographic that you can tap into is these NIL agreements with college athletes. So, they are the true influencers. And at the very top 1%, you're not going to be able to get the Caitlin Clarks and stuff. But like all the volleyball, track, and other athletes that are still like at 30 to 50K followers that are ripe and they don't have management. They're definitely tastemakers on campus. Tapping into that at scale and you don't go through an agency, you don't go through a platform. You're literally like using the ambassadors in your team to find out who are the student athletes with like 10 to 30K followers and building a one-to-one relationship with them. It can be very cost effective, and as long as it's a long-term thing. Like, it's not just getting them to post. It's like, we're going to give you the exclusive brands. You're going to get our cost or like some insane deal with the brands that only the athletes get. And that, to a student whose parents are usually paying for everything, is worth gold. And so leveraging that to work with those relationships, I think, is a huge, huge opportunity for you guys. And I don't know, have you done anything like that yet?
No, we haven't really explored that. I think that there's a lot of upside there. And to your point, since you did this, more than 1 year ago, shall we say, that is something that's clearly changed in the landscape. So it's
Yeah.
worth looking into.
Yeah. Influencer stuff works incredibly well. Another thing that works really well with this target demographic is like meme marketing.
Yeah.
And, I don't know if you've done any of that, but don't do it yourself. You tap the young kid.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
like these interns that I work with on different projects, like they literally could have a degree in memeology, and the exposure you get from a meme ad, like especially if you like, I don't know, Gen Z is using Reddit, but meme ads work really well on Reddit ads. I mean, TikTok as well, like, the crying face with tons of money, like the feeling when my friend, oh, not with money, the crying with tissues, my friend got the drop and I missed it because I was in class or something
Yeah.
like that, like instantly understand. But going back to being at Match Group and Tinder, which really was one of the first companies to really pioneer meme marketing. It was with Hinge, actually, while I was there. Hinge used FOMO memes. So they wouldn't explain what Hinge was. It would be like, I'm so, me when after my Hinge date and, like if they're just eating a giant bag of popcorn, watching Netflix or something. So you have to go and do the search and look at it. And that works really well with young people because of that FOMO. Like I'm supposed to be in the know already. So like your marketing is less like sign up today to get this and that and like old school, like pushing and salesy, and more like if you don't know about it, then you're not only missing the drop, but you're like a loser because your friends already know about it. And that is the messaging and tone that really works. So I think there's some ideas there. Are you doing paid user acquisition on campuses as well, or are you just sponsoring content on TikTok?
We have some referral programs. So if you refer a certain number of users who end up fully onboarding, we provide a cash incentive similar to any sort of give one, get one type flow that you
Yeah.
probably pioneered early with Dropbox and Uber, and to your point,
Yeah.
increasing K factor. I wanted
Yeah,
to yes
exactly.
on one point you said though, which is one, like have the self-awareness to know where your strengths and weaknesses are. I'm not the one doing our memes.
Yeah. No, no,
Um,
no.
but the
Any
meme stuff.
CEO doing the memes after raising 4 million is a micromanager. You know what I mean?
But it's all about finding the right people to do it, right? And so we've started this content series on Instagram called When the Drop Hits, which basically
Nice.
looks at popular culture that week, finds moments of captivated, you know, the public, or kind of transfixed culture, moments of, delight or surprise or whatever, and have tried to build towards that sort of moment every single week.
Nice. But you're not putting a budget behind that content. You're just fully organic. You're not like promoting it or
Well, we are in the early days of trying to figure out our actual
that's
kind of sponsored strategy. There's a bit of a catch-22 here because we believe that social media is broken, and so, do you live long enough to become the villain? And so like
it is
there is,
broken. That's why you have to pay. That's actually part of why it's
yeah,
broken. Like if it was fixed and working organically, it would take off if you were creating incredible content, but it just doesn't. You have to put a budget behind it. But sorry to interrupt you, but if you get organic green flags like positive feedback from people at scale, high engagement, then it's a pay to play environment. And that's part of the reason why I think Claim is so awesome, is because it's solving that, the way it is now, people are only seeing the shit that's being promoted, which just makes it not a democratized environment. It's pay to play. But if you are trying to help people, which is the reason I'm the devil on the shoulder for every founder that I work with. At the end of the day, well, I'm only touching projects that are trying to help people so we can be really aggressive with the marketing.
yeah,
Yes, I'm advertising to you, but it's because I'm trying to help you and save your money. And you're helping the brokest segment of the entire country save money. I mean, they're going to go to the boba tea place anyway and spend $20 on 3 teas or 2 if you're in California. So, Claim is just trying to help you. So I think that if you see content working organically, you gotta advertise it. And you're
double
not just
down on
like
it.
boosting posts. If you're listening to this and you're like, oh, we boost our posts. No, you got to go into the ad platform, and TikTok is so difficult to use. I hope someone from TikTok is listening, but the more difficult it is to use, the less people that are going to be advertising on it. So, Snap has probably even less people advertising on it than TikTok. And it's really easy to go and test all of these platforms. Like it's like a couple hour initiative to do all of them. and bid low and make them compete against each other. I'm spending a couple grand on each one today, the same type of content. Be very clear and obvious which one is working, and then you just double down on that and you just get smarter and smarter. So I definitely think that's something that you got to do. And the cool thing is with a college campus is you're geofencing the ad, and it's not going to be a lot of spend. And you're going to be able to, I mean, you could turn off the frequency capping or do what's called remarketing or retargeting to people and make a more aggressive ad afterwards. Like after if you see that story that you mentioned, the when the drop hits thing, get more aggressive with the remarketing content. And after they see that a few times, like that's enough marketing to pretty much anybody usually, if the drive is really there. But I love that, it sounds like focus on organic word of mouth, the college ambassadors. I think like the last piece of that is definitely the influencers, a little bit of paid ads, and then something that I do when I work with campus ambassadors is teach them public relations instead of hiring a PR agency. And that could be some way that potentially we work together down the line, but it's all Googleable as well. I mean, I wrote a book that you can just give to them as well, and there's a whole chapter on it. But essentially, students love learning shit. So it's pure value for them. A lot of times they're in these internships and because they want to learn marketing, and they're usually business students. So turning them into little micro publicists, they're going to go get campus media to cover, get, maybe some other kind of access to events and campus podcast interview for you and stuff. I mean, maybe not you, but it could be them. And that's another really good way to microcosm your marketing in different places. So I think that's probably all I would really suggest. I mean, an ice luge really works at football tailgating too. If you do that, I mean, it really
Tried
does.
and true.
But again, yeah, tried and true. Again, like I wonder if Tinder is still doing that. But an ice luge is, I think, $180 last time I got one, and you get, probably 5 to 7 million impressions on Instagram of people taking selfies with it, and it's just like a hashtag there. And so, they BYOB, so you're good. You just like come up and use the ice luge as you're walking by, and it could be juice, and no one knows. So it's a funny segment to focus on. Like their interests are changing constantly. And actually, let me ask you this: with the current landscape of like protests and stuff, is this affecting any growth stuff for you guys yet?
Well, before we go there, I just wanted to kind of dive in on one thing you said, which is,
Please.
From a paid perspective, we've found that our acquisition is mostly word of mouth. Like you learn about Claim because your friend has Claim and you feel like you're missing out. And so the goal for our kind of Instagram and TikTok strategy on the consumer side is less pure acquisition. It's more like validation of a consumer hears from their friend. What is this thing? I want to go on here. I want to see that it has, X thousand followers at a minimum. Okay, now I'm going to onboard. Because we know that it takes 3 to 4 impressions, honestly, for people to want to actually affirmatively opt into something. What we found to work really well is if we can create a loop or a feedback mechanism between Claim as a social app and these existing social networks, that actually helps our growth. So what we can do in the app is we can say, hey, follow us on Instagram for exclusive access to drops. And then that essentially 3x our Instagram follower count over the course of just a few weeks because our user base is so large. And then on Instagram, suddenly we have a better account that's more kind of credentialed. And so our Instagram effort and our TikTok effort becomes part of a broader brand marketing strategy, which then makes Claim more appealing to the other side of our market, which is marketers who are trying to reach Gen Z. And you have people in their 30s and 40s kind of scratching their head saying, how do we reach the college students these days? Because I realize that's where culture is set. And so to us, like it's this kind of multi-factor calculation of how do we get to a brand as Claim that is simultaneously authentic and fun to students, but also shows that we've really captured the mind share of these students, and marketers therefore naturally want to use Claim to distribute to these students. That's just a little bit more context about how we see the broader social strategy.
Love that. Love that. Yeah. No, I love that. I hear we got to run ads and do this. And you're like, no, let's like slowly create the FOMO. But I think going back to working with those student athletes and getting them to create content, when working with influencers, like just really dialing up the content guidelines on them. You know, like we don't want to come off as desperate. We're looking for you to recommend to people like legitimately, like you're telling them about this awesome drop and then using that content in ads. So like very rarely are people notice, if you're out of the business, you're not noticing the word sponsored or the word ad on there. So you're just taking the percentage of exposure that you would get from 2% to 20% by spending a little bit of money on it, but it's still like that organic, really valuable FOMO creating friend recommendation type content. So I think there's a way to do both of those things there.
You got my mind turning, by the way, on the NIL stuff, because what if we could brand a student athlete with a drop? Hey, it's the Caitlin Clark drop.
Absolutely.
You know, like that is
absolutely.
Anyways,
and there's
very cool.
Now is the time to focus on student athletes, especially female student athletes, and a lot of them are underserved still, and so I think if it's also a product that's getting hot on campus, then you can even make it competitive, like make a search for the next claim student athlete on campus. And then it's a vote on social media for your favorite student athlete. And you don't even tell the student athletes, you're just like you're tagging them and you're like putting 5 of them, their pictures on, and then they're going to find out about it. And then they're going to share it on their social media. Like, oh my God, vote for me and I'm going to win this thing. Like that's a very low impact way of getting a lot of exposure with like keeping with the trend of not like just doing user acquisition. I love the idea of them hearing about it from friends. Like, dude, you got tagged in this thing. Like you're about to win this thing, and then you go to them after and they're going to be much more receptive to working with you for not like tens of thousands of dollars,
Totally.
So I think that's a cool opportunity.
This is awesome.
Yeah, great. Well, last question, since you're focusing on college campuses and, I don't look at the news at all just to maintain my sanity, or social media at all, but I still hear what's going on just from living in the Bay Area, and it's very political. And I know there's a lot of uprising on some college campuses. Has that impacted anything where you guys are active yet?
Yeah, we're sensitive to what's going on college campuses, and part of trying to understand what's going on comes through our ambassadors, and that gives us kind of the first person perspective. And so, if a given college campus is undergoing a lot of turmoil, we'll adjust accordingly. We don't want to be shouting into the void if a campus is having a particularly, difficult moment. So I would say that we learn from the students that are on campus about how we should approach the situation.
Great. Cool. Yeah, I just wanted to throw you a curveball right at the end there.
I appreciate it.
Great. Awesome. Well, everybody, it's claim.co. If it's not live in your city yet, email them, message them on Instagram and tell them that they need to launch where you're at. And dude, Sam, thank you so much for being here. That was super exciting. I'm going to promote the hell out of this episode. I think it was one of my favorite ones. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me, Andrew. Really fun.
That has been another episode of the Funded Now What podcast with your host, Andrew Lee Miller, brought to you by GrowthExpertz. If you liked the episode, please subscribe. And if you really liked it, please share with other founders and entrepreneurs. Thanks, and we'll see you in the next episode.